Brought to you by Dale Carnegie of Orange County. This is the 411 on Leadership podcast, where we discuss common sense leadership practices with executives in Southern California to transform you into the leader people want to follow. And this is the 411 on Leadership podcast. My name is Steve Thomas, and to my left, as always, is John Campbell. John, how's everything today, my friend?
Good morning. Good Monday morning. Everything's going well. How was your weekend?
Oh, man, it was very relaxful, very peaceful, which is how I like all my weekends to be. If
absolutely.
it could only be like that every weekend, that'd be absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. So, are you ready for the bomb cyclone that's dropping in on California?
I don't know.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Somebody needs to watch the news. What's going on?
I purposely limit my news intake, so that is fair. That is fair. Well, listen, we are brought to you by Sitch Radio. Hey, if you're looking into doing your own podcast, sharing your story, talk to our man Brian. Brian is here at Sitch Radio. He is the managing partner, and so feel free to reach out to him. You can see that in the show notes. Again, go to sitchradio.com if you are looking at starting your podcast. And for those that are listening in, what else can they do, John?
Hey, this is interactive, so we want to hear from you. Please feel free to add your comments, and it really means a lot to us. If you could like and subscribe, feel free to reshare this on your social media, whatever platform you're on, if it's Facebook, it's YouTube, it's LinkedIn Live, or you're listening to us on one of your favorite podcast platforms. We want to hear from you, so please provide content.
Awesome. Well, listen, we are excited with the guests that we have with us today. We're in this series called Success, Failures, and Lessons Learned in 2021, as we like to call it here, the SFL. So we are today going to be focused on the lesson of culture building. An interesting stat here by JobVite, part of their Job Seeker Nation study. They said 46% of job seekers cite company culture as very important when choosing to apply to a company. And so it behooves us as leaders to make sure that we have that culture that makes us an employer of choice. And the person that helps organizations to do that, she is the CEO and founder of Be the Change HR Incorporated. Her name is LeiLani Quiray. And she, again, is works with Be the Change. She leads Be the Change, HR Incorporated, which is a conscious company and social enterprise providing HR support for small to medium-sized businesses in any facet of HR, from pre-hire to post-term and everything else in between. So LeiLani has over 20 years experience in HR, spanning across numerous industries and companies, both large and small. And she's passionate about creating business that not only does HR, but also helps the community by teaching disadvantaged people job readiness skills and donating to various nonprofit organizations. So we are excited again to have LeiLani join us. LeiLani, how are you this morning?
I'm doing excellent for this Monday morning, even though there is a cyclone apparently coming our way.
Right, there is, yeah.
I totally am out with the cyclone. Really?
Bomb cyclone.
It's just rain.
I did see a little rain.
It's just rain.
All of Northern California is flooded, and seriously, it's actually been a really big deal. So.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, I just knew that rain of any kind is a big deal.
In Southern California, absolutely. What is this wet thing falling from the sky?
Definitely. Well, LeiLani, again, we thank you so much for joining us this morning. And so, share with us a little about your leadership story and how did it lead to the creation of Be the Change HR?
Oh, where do I start? I will start at the genesis of how I got into human resources, but I'll make it very quick because I want to bore the pants off of everyone. I started doing payroll when I was 16 years old.
Okay.
And I didn't want to work at Carl's Jr. or Penguins. I was like, I don't want to do this restaurant thing that my friends are doing.
Sure.
And I just had the opportunity to do so and work with the CPA. So by the time I got to college, I was doing payroll, multi-state union environment. And then after that, just continue to climb the corporate ladder, right? I've always worked in human resources. Okay. I had a stint where I thought I was going to do PR, but I realized what that meant after trying to do that for 6 months, just making people happy. And I didn't really like that. And then the parallel to that, and I'll get to why I started Be the Change HR, was back in 2008. I started volunteering for nonprofits here in Orange County, working wardrobes, WHW, helping people get back on their feet by teaching them job readiness skills. Mm-hmm. So this parallel in my career of doing HR and loving it for the most part, there's there's anybody in HR is like, there's an asterisk next to that, because everyone who works at HR, there's always these situations where you're like, I can't believe this happened, and you just can't make this stuff up. But while I was doing my career in HR, I also was doing this job readiness work through these nonprofits. And because of my own personal story, had this passion and this purpose to do that. I always say I won't go into the gory details, but prior to me starting that work, I hit rock bottom a couple of times, kind of fumbled around there for a little bit. So I knew when I got myself to a certain spot that I would help others. Like, the idea of like turning around and then, reaching out a helping hand to people to show them that this can be done, right?
Sure.
So continue to climb the corporate ladder. And then just one year, it dawned on me a couple things. Why am I making other people money? Right. Why don't I start my own business and kind of do it my own way, which is the idea of, which I'm excited to talk about, culture. Because then nobody's telling me what to do. Like, I could just, this is a sandbox to play in order to build an organization. And how do I build a for-profit business that also helps people, right? So through donations, through our job readiness courses. And so I just did it back in 2017. So we just celebrated 4 years. I'm very excited about
Congratulations.
that. Thank you.
Congratulations.
So we're in
That's
our
excellent.
Thanks, 5th year. And so I started Be the Change HR with that exact thing in mind. How do I do human resources and philanthropy under one roof in a for-profit business? It was a lot of fumbling with the philanthropy piece in the beginning.
Sure.
I didn't know what to do, but as we moved into about year 3, all of a sudden it dawned on me, oh my gosh, these job readiness courses, these skills that nonprofits provide, we can provide them as a team to nonprofits for free. A lot of nonprofits don't have that within the things that they provide to the clients that they serve. And so in the people that we work with, the nonprofits, they help people who've been trafficked. They help people who are coming out of homelessness, and then veterans in whatever transitional stage that they're in. So we come in for free and offer these classes and this one-on-one coaching for them in order to help them find healthy, gainful employment. And then on the other side, the part that we make money is we do HR consulting. So it's kind of like a quick story of, me 16 to now. You can guess how old I am. And then,
well, plus 4 years.
Plus
so
4
that
years.
Was, yeah, you're still.
Sure. And then how I really started to build this organization with that key piece in mind.
Right.
How do we have a for-profit business that helps the community always around us?
What was that step like when you decided that I know you said you wanted to do your own, why am I making other, but being an entrepreneur, that is a huge roadblock for a lot of people. How did you get over that hurdle to make that step?
I think that anybody who starts a business is a little batshit crazy. So there's that piece of it. But this isn't my first time starting a business. So at 25, I started my first HR consulting firm. I now tell the secret. At the time, I didn't tell this secret, but I named it after Elle Woods in Legally Blonde because I love the story of like an empowered woman who's like, what? I got into Harvard, like it's hard. And so it was called LHR Solutions. And that lasted about a year because it wasn't ready for that. The PR that I was talking about that I jumped into, that was a side business, and that didn't work. And then while I was climbing the corporate ladder, I also moonlighted and did human resource consulting on the side. So there's always this element of it. It wasn't until I had a year that wasn't a great year that everything was pointing to, why don't you just start your own thing? And then just decided I'm going to do this. Took 3 months to build it, launched, and then off to the races. The one thing that I had in my mind when I was launching this business was like, burn the ships. I am never going back. So I will never, I don't care if I'm like on the street, I will never have a boss again. I'm going to do this. So that type of mindset of like, there is no plan B, just make it happen. I think that really helped me. And again, being a little bit crazy.
Well, that's absolutely excellent. And the question I would have for you is this, like, considering where we are now, and if we're, focus on, Be the Change HR now, have the opportunity to look over some of your values, and values is such a huge part of ensuring that you have a company culture that makes us employers of choice. And so the question I would have for you is, as we've had to go through this pandemic, and we're still kind of there. We're beginning to come out of that, but as you're still dealing with the after effects of that, how were the challenges you had to face in maintaining that culture within your own organization?
Yeah, that's really tough. I'm going to step back a little bit
Sure.
though, for everyone who's listening, kind of to help the entrepreneurs out. I identified my core values, our core values, before I hired my first person. I took a good 6 months. There's tons of books and tools out there, but to hone in on, why do people like to work with us? Well, me at the time, because I was a solopreneur at that time.
Yeah.
Why do people like to work with me? What are my blind spots? Like, what am I not good at that I know I need to get better at because it's going to affect my organization? And came up with calming, caring, reliable, and fun. And so to this day, I will still say, like, are we on brand? Are we living our values? Human resources is a very serious thing, right?
Okay.
And so to interject a little bit of playfulness into it makes it more bearable, not only for the HR professional, but for anybody who's dealing with that person too,
It's
right?
like when you're called by an HR, it's like you being called into the principal's office.
Right. I used to love being like, can I talk to you in my office?
Yeah.
Because I would tell people, can I talk to you in my office? Nothing's gonna happen to you. And they wouldn't believe me. So I just started being like, I need to talk to you like right now.
Right.
And so this core value thing, people will say, oh, I don't have them. Oh, you have them. They're just not written on a paper anywhere or on a plaque in your office. So make sure that you have them. So moving to the pandemic and how to live those, it's constantly going back to that. For us, fun is a thing. And so in the middle of the pandemic, it's like, how can I lighten the mood? The caring piece is very important too. At the beginning of the pandemic, I sent everyone a personal note with a little emergency packet. Like, I hope you're okay. Here's some vitamin C. And as leaders going through this time, it's not just the pandemic that has been going on during this time period. The country's going sideways. There's so much, that's happening that impacts us, that it's a lot of, I'll talk about me as a leader, making sure I pause and I'm seeing this from all angles. And I make sure that the people that work in this organization are taken care of, like personally, like, are you okay? Do you need time off? I will even share if I'm not okay, if I'm confused. I have a huge piece of vulnerability in my organization, and that's part of the caring piece. Right. And so when things go sideways and we don't know what to do, you just have to pause, figure out like how first take care of me, because if I'm acting crazy, that's going to affect everyone else.
Sure.
And they'll see it. They'll see my triggers and my trauma responses coming out. Sure. And then what can I do for them so that they know everything is okay? I'm here to support them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way to sort of go through it. We have to run a business. And that's always my secondary response, right? Sure. My employees first, what's happening to them first, taking care of themselves first, and the business has to run. So how are we going to make these two things happen? But always them first. So that's how I approached the whole pandemic and did my best, in supporting everyone on board.
Well, it sounds like you're having to live in two worlds at once, because not only do you have your own company and your people, but now you're helping to facilitate a connection and see an impact in a culture of a business and an individual worker. So how has that kind of happened during the pandemic? Because there's a lot of stuff going on, and we can even talk about some of that on the outside world, but how is that connection working between, when you're trying to inject yourself into these situations with the business and an employee?
If I'm talking specifically about an employee, whether it's what's happening in the world or what's happening with them personally, again, my mantra is you first, of course, right? The ridiculous idea of be in your seat, whatever that means virtually right now, or in an actual office at 8 a.m. and don't bring your problems to work, and put a stiff upper lip and act like everything's fine, doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't, because people have real heavy things going on in their lives. Yeah. So I will always say them first. And because of that, I'm very proud of this. Because of that, the whole team is so transparent, but as am I. And if
Mhm.
something's going on, they'll fully share what's happening. They know that they have my full support in whatever they need in order to do what they need to do.
Mhm.
And because of that, they also have, we call ourselves the squad. We also have the
Nice.
rest of the squad to help out.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I've even had people say the personal thing that's going on in their life to everybody and ask for. So just that amount of vulnerability means that they feel safe enough. So I guess to answer your question is to create an environment that is safe for a person to be that open so you can support them. And then the secondary piece, business has to run too. So how do we
Yeah.
make these two things happen?
Mhm.
And that balance has worked out beautifully. Do I stress sometimes because I'm like, oh shoot, this person went out and then this person's going out? Like what? Well, I've got the HR, capability to jump in and help on the front line with clients, and I can do that.
Mhm.
But I think it's that piece is making people feel safe enough in the environment to share all the things, including if they have a problem with me, right?
Mhm.
And that's important.
Mhm.
Deep stuff.
I purposely
Whoa.
paused because we talked about this before the start. There's like, what would it look like if we just kind of had a pause in between?
Deep thought.
We're just messing around here, but we're just so happy. We've got LeiLani Quiray with Be the Change HR. She is the founder and the CEO. And so if you have any questions or comments, please be sure to put those in the comments section. Put those questions in the comment section as well. We will address those as soon as they show up. So thank you all for joining us. So LeiLani, everyone here, as it relates to employment, people, I mean, the Great Resignation, right?
Ooh.
That's what everybody's, talking about.
Yeah.
And it's a serious thing, and it should be discussed.
California has
so-
the highest unemployment in the nation right now.
Wow. So it is a big topic. We
Right.
know as of April, I think the Bureau of Labor Statistics said that April said about 4 million left their jobs. That's just in April. I mean, it's been more since then. And so, what are your thoughts as it relates to the Great Resignation? And tell us about the importance of culture in that and why it's imperative for us leaders to have that strong culture.
Yeah. I love this question. Okay. So if there was some type of casino in Vegas that would have let me bet money on this, what was going to happen in the beginning of the pandemic, now I would be rich because I don't gamble a lot. I would probably bet $20 and I would probably get 40 back.
Nice.
So
you get twice as much.
Right.
There you go.
So when the pandemic started, I was immediately like talking about treat your people well now, because unfortunately I was seeing employers who were like, you should be, the attitude was you should be happy to have a job. Right. And then I kept saying like that beautiful quote by Maya Angelou, people will forget, what you say, but they won't forget how you make them feel. And when people are so scared during this time period and you're like, well, you better show up on time and you're lucky to have a job. I kept saying they're going to leave. As soon as this is over, this old school way of thinking of be in your seat at 8 a.m. and, don't bring your problems to work, and you're here to do a job and I pay you for that kind of attitude. And it was just going to go out the window. And so here we are, and we have the Great Resignation where the largest amount of our workforce is now leaving. And I think it was over a decade, right? Everyone is leaving, and then they're citing the reasons why. One of them is, of course, pay. You want to make sure you pay your people well. The other really is, work environment, right? And growth. And so if you were a jerk before the pandemic started, you will now feel it now, right? And then you have a job to do. If you have a lot of people leaving your job, your company, or if you're having a hard time hiring, ask yourself the question, why? Is it really the environment that we're in, or is it the company culture that you had? And people people can see online, there's things like Glassdoor. Everybody check your Glassdoor, but Glassdoor where there's ratings for employers. And so for those people, it's a wake up call of, measure your company culture now and figure out where those gaps are and make a plan over the next year to move the needle to make it a better working place based on your core values, based on what workers see as the most important things to them. If it's pay and you're not paying equitably, maybe do a comp analysis. There's all kinds of things you can do. and then you can move that needle, but you're hurting right now. And so hopefully you're hurting and you'll see like, oh, this is why. And then there's the company cultures who don't have a hard time hiring anybody right now. I know where Antis Roofing is right next door. A company like that who has an amazing culture.
Yeah.
I bet money if I went into HR and I asked, are you having a hard time finding people? They probably wouldn't feel it as badly as a company who had a bad culture.
Yeah.
And so that is a reinforcement to anyone who isn't having a hard time finding someone or isn't having a hard time retaining their employees. There's pat yourself on the back. Also continue to measure, pulse check to see, your employees' engagement, satisfaction. I know I say these, it sounds like a complicated thing to do, but it's really not. You could find a survey somewhere, make sure it aligns with your core values, use something like Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, make it short, start tiny, 10 questions. Are you happy here? Right? Do you think your pay is fair? Do you like the people you work with? I mean, do you feel like you have room to grow? I mean, that could be it by itself. And then just communicating with your workforce, we're going to start this new thing. It's going to be small, but we're doing our best. And then once we get the results, we will communicate with you and we will work to be better.
Yeah.
So this pandemic has, I think, really shown poor culture, good culture, and everything else in between.
From one of the things I get from this conversation, I think I got this from Jason. So Jason Richmond, in one of his books, is just mentioned, you either can define your culture or your culture will define you. And I hear that a lot in our conversation that we're having right now. And the encouraging thing is that you can still do something about it if you're having a negative culture. And I think some of those steps that you outlined, starting small with, hey, just start out with a 10-question survey, assessing where you are right now, as long as, obviously you're adjusting and make sure it aligns with your values, but then just putting it out there and just seeing where you are as an organization. And then from at that point, moving on to additional steps from there. If you don't have a mission statement or a vision statement, utilizing that to go in that direction. I think the important thing is what we're discussing, which you articulated so well, LeiLani, is just starting now and start small. You know what I mean? Doesn't have to be anything out of the blue or anything huge, because that can be intimidating, right? Because we can look at it and it's like, man, this is daunting. So it's, I suffer from this. It's the analysis paralysis, where like everything looks so daunting and there's so much that needs to be done. Like I just freeze and not do anything. However, it's okay to start small as long as you start.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we look at this year, you talked a little bit about some of the positive steps you're able to do. What's been something that you felt like was a home run or that you guys did well looking back over, we can call it the whole pandemic era, because it's impacted everybody. And there's been successes, there's been failures. What were you proudest about?
I wish I could see behind the curtain of what my people say to each other.
Okay.
I see enough to know to be able to answer this question. And I bet you if I were to actually see, like, I probably would be a little misty-eyed. It is how the home run for us is how everyone has supported each other.
Okay.
Whether it's, jumping in for something personal, really rallying around something that we're doing, a initiative that we have. This year was the first year in my organization that I had to do a turnaround. We were in the red for the first part of the year, and having the team rally around that, and just seeing like, let's brainstorm. What can I do to help? Like with me, what I can see. And I know they do that for each other. Okay. And I think that is a huge home run. We also are fully virtual. So a lot of times when we would hear people say, well, you can't have a cohesive team in a virtual environment. I'm like, well, like we do it, Right. But it's a lot of mindfulness around what that means for each organization and what works for everybody. So I think that piece too of thriving, having this cohesive, unit, and really having people support each other during these hard times.
We got a comment, and I'll summarize the question here. It's basically with everything going on, and you talked about, treat your people well. We've had the Great Resignation. Do you feel like some greater level of ownership in the negotiation process now the employee has? Like, do they have a little bit more pull in having some of those? And what does that negotiation look like?
You mean in general, right? Like,
right.
Yeah. You mean, and negotiating a new role?
Yeah, whatever in that perspective. So
Yeah.
it was, what is the pay structures being changed, or are
Mm.
negotiations different
Yeah.
for employees now?
Yeah, this has happened slowly, but now before this, and now we
Okay.
have a big, slow down to go fast. Like now we're going fast.
Okay.
So some of these laws that have been put in place, like you can't ask someone, what salary they made prior to in the state of California. There are other states that are like that right now. Google your state.
Okay.
In order to give someone
Say that again now, just so everybody caught it.
Yeah. So when it comes to asking someone what their salary was at a former job,
Okay.
you can't do that in the state of California.
Okay.
And there are other states where you can't do that.
Okay.
It's not federal yet, so that doesn't apply to everyone, but just Google your state.
And as a hiring manager, you should know that also.
Yes, you should know that. You can't ask so what'd you make? And the reason that exists is to allow people to get paid fairly for the job at hand, not for what they made prior.
Right.
There are inequities due to race, due to gender, sexual orientation that we're trying to eliminate. So this has already been happening over the years.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden with, people realizing for whatever reason, the work environment, they don't like, they want to leave. They're not getting paid enough. They don't like how they're treated. They don't think there's enough growth in that organization. And having, the Great Resignation happen, all of a sudden people are waking. I think everybody, I hope, is waking up. That's something like fair pay is pretty darn reasonable to ask for, correct?
Right.
And so is a good working environment.
Yes.
A lot of times I will talk about leaders really working on themselves and healing themselves, because there's a reason why the environment is toxic. And you just got to look to the top, right? We're all human. We all have our things to work on. And so that trickles down though. So I think it's fair for employees to say, I want a healthy work environment too.
Yeah.
And as leaders, we are responsible for providing that. So in negotiation, you could easily, I saw this on Instagram today. I was like, genius, why should I work there? Right? Like, can I talk to other people about the work environment? Is it possible for me to do that? So it's no longer a one-sided interview. It really should be both sides of like, is this going to be healthy for me to work here? Like, first of all, am I get paid properly? How about my benefits? And at the same time, am I going to cry more than once a month? Like, because if that's the case, I'll go find someone who's going to treat me a little bit better, because we spend so much time at work. So I think negotiation definitely is part of the process. And I will say this, I even say this in our job readiness classes. If the questions that you're asking someone doesn't like, or if you don't think they're going to treat you properly, or they're not going to give you the respect to answer those questions, then it's probably not you don't want to work there anyway. Right? So,
And everybody, we're talking with LeiLani Quiray. She is the founder and CEO of Be the Change HR Incorporated. And so we want to say thanks for Susmitha for your question. Steve, thank you for your comment. Are there any comments yet? We just had a couple. So I appreciate you putting that in there. And thanks so much for encouraging us and viewing us here on the podcast. As we wind things down a little bit, LeiLani, what would you say? We're talking about the importance of building our cultures. I mean, considering where we are right now, whether it's a Great Resignation, whether it's the pandemic, moving forward, what is that one practice? And I feel like we've talked about a few, but if we were to just kind of nail down that one, it doesn't have to be the only one, but if we were to nail down, what is that one practice that executives, people that are listening to this podcast, what is one thing they can do to build their culture this week?
This week, I really encourage, if you're not doing it yet, to do that pulse check with the surveys. It's very easy. You could Google Gallup employee engagement questions. You'll find some there. Just come up with some. I'm glad to help. And then the other thing is, everything is so serious right now. So we're going to talk about this side of me, but I do encourage everyone to be lighthearted and have fun. I like making the joke, we're not curing cancer unless you actually are, then if everything's very serious. But have fun with everything we're doing. Have fun with your workforce. It's important. So
LeiLani, does that fun include, going ice climbing or, rock climbing or any sort of camping or mountaineering?
I'm so glad you asked. I am a mountaineer. I'm looking forward to ice climbing this season. And that's one thing as a leader that I'm very serious about. Aside from everything else and all the heavy weight that we have, I stop work after 5 p.m. I don't work on the weekends. I go out, I ice climb, I rock climb, and make sure that I have fun. So I'm refreshed for my team on Mondays.
By the way, I did read that on her website. So just she does do all the things, which I'm absolutely amazed by. Ice climbing, that's next level. That's next level stuff. So LeiLani, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast. We hope to have you again pretty soon. So, again, we just want to say thank you to you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
How can our listeners get a hold of you if they need to get in contact?
Any social platform at Be The Change HR, and you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, LeiLani Quiray, last name Quiray, or you can email me, LeiLani at BeTheChangeHR.org. I should spell my first name LeiLani.
Very cool.
Perfect. Well, listen, thank you so much. Todd, thanks so much. We appreciate your support of the podcast. Steve, thank you very much for that comment as well. Just wanting us just to be careful about the Gallup Q12 questions. If we are going to use it, keep in mind that it is copyrighted. So make sure you do what you need to do to make sure that you're using that in a legal way. So thank you so much for that as well. And as we're talking about culture building, as we're wrapping up this podcast, I did want to mention this book by our friend Jason Richmond. Great book. It's called Culture Ignited: 5 Disciplines for Adaptive Leadership. If you're looking for another resource for you to build your culture, I recommend this book by Jason as it goes through, what disciplines that we need to incorporate. One of those disciplines is creating a sense of belonging by utilizing inclusion and methods. So that's just one discipline that we can utilize. And so I encourage you as a resource. Again, it's currently new on Amazon. It incorporates everything from the pandemic. So you're getting some reliable, not current, so much current. Well, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. You're getting some current data in this. Thank you very much. That's why John is here, to keep me honest.
That's right.
So I appreciate that. And so I encourage you to get this book. It is on Amazon.com. And John, any final words from you?
We appreciate you so much. Thanks for taking time with us today. Make sure you continue to comment, because we will go back and check. Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, listen, thank you all so much. If you want any more resources, feel free to visit us on our website, ocdalecarnegie.com, where we have additional resources to help you build culture. Those that have registered for our podcast today, you'll be getting a little gift via email today with some strategies that you can utilize to build the culture in your organization. So remember, managers light a fire under people, while leaders light a fire in people. Talk to you soon.